everybody. Welcome to Impossible Live. Welcome back if you're returning, if you're joining us on a replay. I am so delighted to introduce you to our amazing guest today, who also, in case internet for some reason blips out, I want you to put in chat that you really want to hear Roz sing. And if Roz doesn't agree to sing, we're going to have to put in a link somewhere to her amazing voice. But without further ado, Roz and I met in an extremely active Facebook group that we're not sure how active it is right now, but I really want to thank Bernie Dubs and Tiffany Patterson for making it possible so that we could connect. What I love is I met Roz at a point where I was a lot less active on social media. And Roz was like this vibrant, amazing voice, like gorgeous photos and really well written content that just invites you in. So without further ado, I'm going to give you a chance to meet amazing Roz Clark.
Hey there. I am so happy to be here and just excited. So, first of all, Mel, thank you so much for being intentional. That's one of the things I love about you. You are so intentional in staying connected, staying engaged, creating a safe space. And yeah, you're right. I have just watched your content grow, your confidence grow, and consequently your voice and your network grow. And so it's been so awesome to, have that happen and just our friendship grow. And I think that that's one of the cool things about when you create genuine and meaningful connections online, and I've been super intentional about that this year, because people are like, oh, I want to friend you or I want to connect or whatever. And yet why? Like if we're not going to stay connected, if we're not going to have a conversation, if we're not going to create community, and it doesn't mean we have to do business together. What it means is that we have to be connected and celebrate each other. So as everybody is coming online and joining this space, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this experience. And so, yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
So Roz has not yet told us much about herself. So we're going to give this lovely lady with a very long, amazing, you can't even call it a CV. It truly is an amazing body of work. And I really have to thank you for that. But Roz, help us today by understanding what is a dream doula?
What does a dream doula do, right? And here's the thing, like to your point, my journey, my inherent in my spirit and in my inherent nature, I am an artist at heart. So that is the beginning of my journey. I was this, vibrant, precocious, young woman who always wanted to be in the light, so watched MGM musicals, didn't see anybody who looked like me, well, they might have looked like how I look now, but when I was little, I didn't look like this, you know what I mean? And so I always wanted to engage and I always wanted to show up and bring light and joy and laughter. And so that's really been my journey throughout my life. And so if you are a creative, you are a dreamer by nature. If you're creative, you're dreaming. And so my thing was, even as a kid, those movies like, hey kids, let's do a show. And so it was always kind of that energy. And I always wanted everybody to win. So again, that's just in my inherent nature. So in the journey, this journey that I've had from, being a young girl, a young African-American girl in the 60s in a working class blue collar neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a dream that was bigger than where I was from, to turning 21 in Paris, singing with a classical choir, to coming back to the States to keep working on my craft and getting married. And, my second child was born with special needs. And so that changed my trajectory. And through those years, and thank God he's still here, my miracle boy is still here, and, turned 30 in December. And over those 30 years, my marriage turned toxic and dysfunctional. And so after 30 years, I walked away. Like, I walked away from a toxic and dysfunctional relationship and went through a period of homelessness for about 3 months. And a year later, I went back to Paris for the first time to celebrate my 60th birthday. And what I celebrated was my birth and my rebirth, because that was like, now is my time to come forward. And so in doing that as a dream doula, I want to share that experience with the same, with people as well, that you have an opportunity to give birth. You're pregnant with possibility, you're pregnant with potential, you're pregnant with so many things that are waiting and longing to be lived in you. And so as a dream doula, I come alongside, very specific clientele and say, okay, let's breathe now. Okay, the discomfort that you feel is just labor pains. The discomfort is something that's getting ready to be birthed in you. And then when we finally get everything in place, then the next thing is push. Just push your dreams out there, push your message out there, push your gift and your greatness out there, because the world is waiting for you. So that's how I show up in the world as a dream doula.
We love that. And if I could multiply the amount of hearts that we're seeing as emojis that are really popping up. And Therese, thank you for joining us. And Serenity, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I think the thing that I'd love to really pause with is, as you're saying about a doula, we're full of stuff, we're full of dreams, we're full of ideas. And what I loved in the process of coming up with today's title was talking with Roz about water and how it changes, the currents, the movements, and how kind of the shore dives part, the shore views part will probably be the lens, kind of sometimes from the shore, we don't look like we're an active participant. We might be sitting in a cool chair. We might be driving by. We might be on a balcony looking out at the shore, or maybe you're checking out a lake or a pond or a waterfall. But it's really the lens part. But I love what Roz is talking to, because we really do need help on the deep dives, those scuba dives. We need the right equipment. We need the right support. And I love what you're saying, because you're really reminding us that, in a sense, that labor of in many cases, labor of love, or what may really feel like a labor of lessons we're learning. It we really need some support in the process, and you're giving us kind of a view over time, which I think is really the challenging part. We're not sure sometimes where that labor is going to take us.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, like even the whole idea with around water, because water is such it's an incredible element, and it's actually one of my favorites. I love to swim. We've talked about that a little bit. I love to swim. I love the beach. I love the power of the ocean. I really love oceans. I love all bodies of water, but the ocean, the power and the ebb and the flow of the ocean. And like you said, you never see the same water twice. You never see the same shore twice. And so there is this view, the long view of, oh, wait a minute, it keeps changing. So where's this wave coming from? Or what is that going to do next? And like when we talk about water from so many different levels, so like in a spiritual sense, so many spiritual practices use water, whether it is for the cleansing, whether it is for the baptism, whether it is for, that flowing into the water, and so this is going to be Mel's little moment right here, because in the Black church, what do they say? Take me to the water. And so that when that moan and that groan begins to happen, we're like, take me to the water to be baptized. And so we're moving in that, and it just does something not only for the person going in the water, but for the community that is bearing witness to that. And so as we again take this image of birth, rebirth, and put it with the water, then that community comes around you. And a drop of water becomes a ripple effect. And so again, there's so much beautiful and powerful imagery around water, around birthing, and just in the human beings, in the physical sense, what happens first before a woman gives birth? Her water breaks. So her water breaks to clear the path for that new life to come through. So there's so many ways that water impacts and informs our journey. And so if we learn how to take the imagery, the metaphysical imagery, the ideological imagery, and I don't like the word religious, but the sacred, here we go, the sacred imagery of what water does for us and prepares for us and gives us an opportunity to become a part of. And so when we come up, sometimes we're individual, but then we come together, and the water, we become the body. And it's just a beautiful idea.
I could listen to you forever. So your words really are like poetry. And Roz did sing a little for us. It's really just a tease, I promise I'll try and disappear so that, she could sing for longer. But what I love is from so many different perspectives, the water kind of can ease us and move us from one current or another. Sometimes that shore view feels like, got a lot on your mind, a lot on your plate. You kind of can feel like you're in a riptide or you're in a really strong current. I agree with you, and I love, love, love the ocean. Our our first family reunion that I went to as an adult in our family, and mom's traced our family back like 8 generations. So family
Wow.
reunions are a really big thing and a big part of her history. But I remember that first time spending lots of time just looking over the balcony. I fell in love with the water. I fell in love with the sky, just with the possibilities. And I think I really felt at one point, like you're saying about labor pains sometimes, that they really can feel like they're black and white.
Mhm.
There's so much going on there, whether it's angst, whether it's discovery. And Therese and Serenity are not so happy with the part about the labor pains. And but at the same point, as we're moving through it, it can kind of feel like there's a cleansing. So I love what you're saying about a sacred space, because whether it's religious, whether it's spiritual, whether it's just an inner storm, that hopefully we're moving past with tremendous support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think also too, I love the waves as they break.
Yeah. Yeah. The way they crash in, or just even the sound, because think about it, when you're near a body of water, you sleep better. And I know part of it is the sea air, but it's also that lullaby, like you said, of the waves crashing, and all of those things. And I think that so often, like you were saying, Serenity and Tracy are like, no, not the labor pains, we don't want to do those. And it was really interesting because just recently, this couple shared a video of her giving birth. I mean, detailed all the way, her standing and the baby coming out and him catching. And so many times, and I know it's different for everybody, on TV, it's and the crying and the breathing. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. And yet for her, she just kind of just moaned and kind of moved through it. And some people were offended, that she shared something so intimate. And then other people were like, how beautiful to watch this couple share this experience. And there was, an actual birth doula there. So they did a at home birth. And so even the contractions, even the pain, because if you don't know, like the baby could just drop anywhere. So if you don't have the labor pains, if you don't have the contractions, if you don't have even the pain in your back, because your discomfort lets you know that there is something waiting or ready to be birthed in you. And so if we just go through it with nothing happening and just rainbows and unicorns all the time, then we don't get to have the benefit of that. And I can speak for myself because I wasn't able to do birth naturally. And like I'm sure you could tell, I was ready. I had trained and I had gone to the Lamaze classes and I had practiced my breathing and all of that. And I ended up having to have a C-section. And I was really disappointed by that because I wanted to have that experience, and yet I didn't get to have that experience. But what I did get to have was, and so I didn't even get to see, because it was surgery, I was awake from here up. But anyway, when they handed me my daughter, I just looked down at her and I just called her by her name because I knew her. I knew her before she got here because I knew her as I carried her. And what's interesting is through life, as she has grown and evolved into her own person, she changed her name. And so at first for me, it's like, oh my God, you're taking my child away from me. And what I had to do was release her to that season because she was birthing who she felt she needed to be. And so while it was difficult for me at first, I had to honor her birth and, her birthing and rebirthing process so that she could move into who she needed to be. And so even in that, there was pain in that for me. There was sadness in that for me. There was loss in that for me. And yet watching her become her own woman and making her choices, there was joy in that process. So I had the pain and the joy, and I had the release. So all of those things, I just don't think it's possible to have success or to give birth or to build anything without going through the labor process.
Mm. It so makes so much sense, as the part of the lessons or the discovery. But I really love what you're reminding us. It really is about that process of birth or creation or rebirth,
Mm-hmm.
and what I love too is you're reminding us in the birth and the rebirth, it's not just, people like calling it a journey. I was on a cappuccino call last week with an amazing gentleman. We were talking about storytelling, and he specializes in helping people build the stories around their brands. And in the process, he was asking me about the hero's journey and had I heard of it, and I was smiling. But you're reminding us that in the process, we may not feel like the hero. Therese is also reminding us of that as an entrepreneur, but it's really reminding us it really is a process. And Dee, welcome back. Dee says your discomfort lets you know, and she can really resonate with that. And that's the part that many don't speak about or talk about. Recently we were having some tech glitches on Impossible Lives, and I appreciate them as part of Catherine being in the green room with her exceptional support, and others kind of chiming in to kind of keep us going with love and light. We really appreciate it, but it's the reminder, it is so not always a journey that you can measure in steps and and in stones. And I think that's the part about the water that really soothes and kind of really helps guide me. Water's one of my three big themes. Other things are that lens part, the vision part, and kind of the rhythm or the music that guides us, what the tempo is. I was watching we were watching a movie last night, and a family movie. It inspired Bali is now on the bucket list. I had never quite seen Julia Roberts and George Clooney and this magnificent, magnificent backdrop. And just a reminder to dream bigger. I love the water, no matter what color it is, but my gosh, there's such a peaceful, peaceful part to it, you know? And Serenity, thank you so much. It's not always a journey that we can measure in steps. That's one thing I love about the water. And we were cracking up. One of the people in the water was saying, I don't swim, I like to float. And others are, they'll debate whether they prefer a lake or a stream or a pool or a lazy river pool or an infinity pool, no matter what the water body is. But I love that you're reminding us of the dream part, which I think sometimes in the description of the journey, we forget the dreams.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
think of goals, we think of the big stuff we're reaching for, we think of the steps that we take. But I
Yeah.
love in the process. Go
Yeah.
ahead,
No, no,
Russ.
no. And I was just going to agree with you because it all starts with a dream. I mean, we're talking on a dream. Like the fact that somebody was like, okay, there has to be a way that somebody who is in, in New York can talk to somebody who's in Georgia and they don't have to be in the same place. And so we're talking in a dream. We're sitting in a dream with everybody, everything that we experience is a dream. And it's so interesting you were talking about the storytelling marketing, because that's one of the things that I do too. And because I'm an artist, of course, again, I'm a storyteller. I'm used to telling stories. And so one of the things in my journey, in my evolution, in my business practice and my coaching practice, and I've had several businesses, is one of the things that I'm really passionate about is showing up fully and authentically as ourselves. So yeah, can we hit the buzzwords? Can we look at what's trending? Can we do all of that? Of course we can, and we can find people and pull them in. And yet that's not your dream client. There are certain people that I am their dream coach and they are my dream client. So if I show up as something other than what I am, they're never going to know who I am. So if I show up, like today I show up with pink and blonde hair, and tomorrow I may have purple hair, and then the day after I may be coming off the golf course and I got a golf cap on, you know what I mean? Because I'm fully and authentically myself, and obviously it takes work, and that's what some of the work that I help people do in their growth and in their journey in their business is being mindful of who they are, being mindful of what they want to attract. Our words have power. And so when you talk about, the riptides that, when you get caught in a riptide, sometimes you have to release and surrender, or it'll pull you down. So, but if you release and surrender and go with the flow further downstream, when it releases, then you can go in a different direction. So it's the same kind of experience that if you're building a business and you're building a brand or you're building a community, whatever you're building, be authentic. Like there's some people that, one, I'm not their coach, and two, I don't want to coach them. Like I'm not, I don't, I'm not that person. I love the saying that if I got to drag you in, I got to drag you around. I'm not that person. I'm that person who wants to work with somebody who wants to transition or maybe feeling unsure about saying, I want more. They may already have so much that they feel guilty about saying, I want more. And what I'm saying is, don't judge where you've been, because we're talking about that rebirth part. When you have a shift or when you have a pivot or when you have a rebirth, it doesn't make what you did before wrong. It just means that you're ready for something different now. And so if you release the judgment of that and you release the energy and the language attached to what's holding you back and celebrate what brought you there, because like my story, I could be like, it was horrible and I hated it. And yet instead I'm like, it was 50 shades of crazy. And after 30 years, I said, I'm done. I'm not signing up for anymore. And I'm more interested in telling my story without telling his, so that the person who needs to hear, how do you start over from ground zero at 59, and and then be in Paris at 60? Like, that's the story I want to tell. Because the
Mm,
story about what happened or what they did or what they didn't do, that's not an interesting story. And that's not an empowering story. So if I told a story about, oh, I was broke and I'm still broke, that's crazy. Like, who would hire me? Why would you? You know? And yet, if I can tell that story, and you don't have to even be at the mountaintop, you can tell your story at each level.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be from the mountaintop that you tell the story. You can tell the story on the ascent. What you can't do is tell the story from the pit.
That is so true. It's a reminder to just to pause. I love water also because water makes the movement easier, and it gives you an opportunity to pause, to reflect. And sometimes during those water views, there are less digital distractions.
Yes.
Technology is not necessarily attached to our hip, but at the same time, I think it allows a chance to really get like laser focus. And I love Serenity's comment, which is to tell your story on each level, tell the story from the ascend. What you can't do is tell the story from the pit. Um, Thank you so much for those mics and amazing mic drops that you're reminding us, because I think we do forget to tell the story when we're in a cave, where so our energy is directed towards trying to dig out, trying to hit the surface.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why in the title I included scuba dives. It reminds me of one of an amazing coach I met uh, probably now almost 3 decades ago.
Mm.
And her name is Pam Hooks. And Pam's kind of the metaphysical, spiritual. She was vegan before it was really cool. She ended up teaching. She's always such an amazing teacher every time I see her. And what I loved was Pam was getting ready to go to Tahiti. And she says, I want to learn how to dive and get certified in scuba diving so
Mhm.
I can go on day or night dives in Tahiti. And that was her thing, was to work on that certification. So you could kind of go through the deep dive. And what I loved about it was she's a woman who embraces transformation.
Mhm.
She reminds you to embrace change, that there's always change around the corner. Uh, Pam's probably the person who helped me learn never to say never. And rarely, if we say something like, never have I ever, So I thought about it because also when I met her, I always watched people swim with dolphins and I
Mm.
really wanted to try it. But at the same time, the day that it was finally time to go swim with the dolphins in Puerto Vallarta, I wasn't feeling the water that day. I really felt, as Roz would say, I felt the fear, I felt the terror. A little bit, as Dee would say, I have to release the shame. Our friends who were on the trip, they were so excited. I just, that one day, I think it would have been a day for me to tip my toe, to dip my toe in the water. If I was on the beach, I might not have gone in the water. It might have been a water aerobics and then get out and chill day. But it's the real reminder somewhere in that story, whether it's dreaming of something and then the dream pops in and it's something different, or the dream changes over
Yes.
time.
Yes, that part. And I think you, Mel, you just hit on something so important, because the dream does change. The dream does evolve, and there's sometimes you have to totally release the dream. You know what I'm saying? You have to just totally release the dream. And other times you just have to refocus or repurpose the dream. And so, like, part of the work that I do, because I always say that our dreams are the roadmap to our destiny. And so, that thing that was in us from the time we were a little person still informs who we are, right? And so people, some of my clients will be like, well, Roz, I dreamt that I was going to be an Olympic skater and I can't do that now. And yet what you can do is get back on the ice and start moving on the ice, because there is something that releases in the physicality of doing what you're passionate about. So, that's why people take dance classes, or yoga classes or qigong or whatever, well into their 80s or whatever, because there is something about the physicality of moving, to stay with the theme of the water, to going with the flow, to allow that us to become one with the current, so that we move into that gifting and that planning and that changing. And so again, when it comes time, like my while I never thought I would get married, when I made the decision to do that, I had the dream of like having this wonderful family and building legacy and wealth for generations to come. And that didn't happen. And
Mm.
so when it didn't happen, like I said, I could have stayed all up in my feelings. I could have been like, oh, nothing worked or whatever. And what I did was I said, okay, that part of the dream wasn't the truth. It might have been for a moment, and for whatever reason, it's not. And yet the part that I get to make happen, the part that I get to create generational wealth, the part that I get to make sure that there's a special needs trust in place for my adult son with special needs, so that his sister only has to make decisions and not be financially responsible for him, that dream still lives. And now, because I shed the weight of what was holding me back, I can move into that dream in a different way. So it may not look like what I thought it was going to look like, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still for me and it's still for my children. So family may have shifted, and yet my intention didn't. And so I released the part that's no longer true and that wasn't to be. And I keep moving into, who am I in this situation? How do I show up in this situation? It's the same thing that I do with my clients. A lot of my clients are moving out of C-suites. And it's like, I got there and like I thought it was going to be this. And instead I feel like I have golden handcuffs on and I hate it. And so the first thing people want to say is, I wasted. No, you didn't. Because everything that you learn, every skill that you have is still a part of who you are. Now let's just take those tools and redirect them in a way that serves you and your calling and your highest purpose, because your dream is still the roadmap to your destiny. It just means that now you're using these tools and resources and vision in another way that serves a greater good for you and humanity.
That really reminds me, as you're saying, about the climb. People focus on the climb or on the ascent, that you're going down on a dive, on a deep dive, but really you have to emerge some point. But I think people get so used to, do I have the right equipment to support the climb? Whether it's a breathing apparatus, whether it's a guide, whether it's the right shoes and you're really climbing, or you're on a hike and you needed a walking stick. But I think that focusing on the ascent sometimes, I'm reminded in today's title, in our discussion, that what happens on the way down, on how we approach it, on what we're looking at, what we're focused at, what we are taking away from it. Kind of one of the things that I love about positive intelligence is the reminder in positive intelligence and mental fitness coaching is to look for the gift, or look for the opportunity, or look for the lessons. It's one of the cool, 7 coaching steps. And sometimes we don't see the gift in the darkness. We don't see it until the lights come back on, or until our vision changes. But I love what you were saying, because I think sometimes too, on the climb, we're not, we're laser focused in the same way we would be in a tunnel,
Yes.
where, on a deep dive. And sometimes it's that reminder that we need things to open up our vision. It's never going to be a pure 360
Yes.
unless you're surrounded by amazing people who are, just helping you widen that view and letting you know what you can't see at the moment.
Right.
But I think underneath it, and Serenity's saying it again, there's an opportunity. Whether you're on a climb, whether you're in a descent, whether you're on the shore view, whether you're on the scuba dive, there's always some sort of opportunity. And that part can be really hard to process. I love that through the frame and the lens of what you were saying before about a birth or a rebirth, because it's what's our origin story. People are like, where'd you start from? Where are you going? How did you get there? And sometimes looking back, it's hard to describe, which is why I love journaling. Remind us of the view daily, weekly. I've got a bunch of journals. I now have a gratitude journal, I have a trust journal, and I'm reminded in our conversation to keep writing in both for different reasons. I am so grateful that you're joining us today, that the internet is holding, that Roz sang a little bit. She had a little bit of hmm, Roz's juicy artistic gems and talents there. Roz, as we're wrapping up, what's something you want to leave people in? Like, what's a good way for others to get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
So, a couple things. One is I have a masterclass that's coming up called Content to Cash. And it's all about, like we're talking about, that's telling your story, taking your story and your content. Because, like you said, as I grew my presence online, it was from just authentic storytelling and building and growing. And so, I'm doing a workshop, a master class in July. And so if there's a link, we can drop a link in there and just share that. So that's a really good way to get a deeper dive, if you will, on how I work and how I show up in the world. If you want to follow me online, it's at Roz, R-O-Z, at Roz Diva Nation. And so I'm on, multiple platforms. I'm really active here on LinkedIn. I have some TikTok stuff going, which is a lot of fun. And so, you can find me there. And I just want to encourage everybody to keep, to stay open. Like right now, there's a big conversation about AI and what's AI going to do? AI is going to do as much as you know how to feed it information, because it cannot grow without you feeding it the right information. When it works for you that way, you will never be obsolete. So keep telling your story, keep using your voice. Know that who you are matters. Know that your gift matters. Know that how you show up in the world matters. And Mel, as always, I want to say that to you because I so honor how you show up in the world, how you create a space, how you open dialogue, how you are such a generous connector. Like you just have an incredible gift and this inherent generosity of connecting people and making life feel better. And so I just want to thank you. I'm grateful that you're in my life. And I'm grateful that, we get to share the platform on a regular basis. So thank you for who you are and how you show up in the world.
Thank you. And truly, thank you for lots of loving support. It's more than the we need people like you
Mhm.
to turn on the lights in the tunnels, to kind of light the road. And I love it because D is here, and D is here, and D has an amazing podcast about who lights our fire. It's in the process of I call it make space to emerge. We really need this support so we can identify the lane. It's also one of the reasons why I love the Sea-Doos or the Wave Runners. I love them because there is no lane. We can create our own.
Yeah.
create our own path. I get in trouble with family because I go too slow. I like to see the sea turtles under the water. And and the first time that I drove one, I ended up flipping it 3 times. We were in Tahiti and Bora Bora, so in sync. And it was kind of like, honey, whichever way you go, I'm going with you. Well, I flipped us 3 times. And that was the day that I learned how important it was when you have a chance to appreciate the water view, to take the time,
Yeah.
to take the space. Roz was a lifeguard. She still is now as a dream doula.
Hmm.
And I love it because you reminded me of my amazing cousin, Melissa, who's a midwife who is taking a break in Maine right now. So I know she's enjoying some gorgeous water views. As we're trying to center Roz, and I know it's hard, for those who have multiple dreams and they're trying to take one step towards a dream, where do they start?
Wow, that's such a big question, and I love it. So, what I would say, and it's interesting because somebody is reaching out to me wanting to engage with me right now, and it's like I'm a this and I'm a that, and I'm a this and I'm a that, you know. And while you can be all of those things, I think the thing that you have to do is find center, find the center and the truth of who you are, how you show up in the world, who you're called to be. What is that thing that when you think it, say it, or close your eyes at night and dream about it, it feels right, real, and authentic? Start there. Start there. And it may feel small, it may feel obscure or whatever. Stay with that part, and it will lead and inform everything else. And here's the thing, get a coach, because if what you were capable of doing could have gotten you to where you want to be, you'd be there. And so that's no judgment. I have coaches, Mel has coaches, every good coach has a coach or two. So center on what your gift is, center on what your passion is, not what will make money, not what people think you should do. What is your passion and your purpose? When you align with that, the money will come. Actually, the money becomes the easy part. So align with what your gifting, your passion, and your calling is, and everything else will work its way into fruition.
Oh, I love that. Such whew, a reminder to really stick with what's genuine, what really may be part of your internal faith walk. And when we forget that beat, having somebody around who helps us separate the voices or the ideas, whether they're spiritual, whether they're religious, but that they're grounded in a core that really feels like you.
Yes.
And sometimes people may come along. I'm a believer in that reason, season, and lifetime.
Yes.
And I thank Roz for being on the lifetime list because we need to see people like you who remind us to keep dreaming, keep aiming for the stars, keep changing our lane, really hearing, identifying our vision. And it can be really challenging. And I had a friend a while ago who's like, I don't believe in coaches. And I thanked her for her comments. And she says, why are you saying that? I said, I resisted being a coach. I was a consultant. I was a promotional products distributor. Then I was a promotional products consultant. Then I started shifting into the learning lane. So now I could say I'm a coach sultan. And then I went to a wonderful presentation by Cliff Quicksell at a Promotional Products Association International Conference. And Cliff asked, how many of you would like to get paid? And he says, how many of you who are consultants who have coaching fees? And there were about 300 of us in the room, and two of us raised our hands. And I remember thinking of it because I kind of was following him everywhere. I would pay for the sessions, I would go for free. I was kind of following him everywhere for a little bit. But this woman who was in the row right next to me, what I smiled was two of us switched our business cards as he headed towards us because he wanted to dive into it. And that process of selecting being or becoming a coach, coaches are there to help you in the trenches or to help you get to the next level or to figure out what equipment to carry as you're trying to ascend. But Roz, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for the grace, for the elegance, for the beauty that is Roz, and for joining us today.
Cheers.
Hey, hey. For those of you who have joined us live and hung out with us, we thank you so much for popping in. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, thanks also for stopping in. We hope you pop back in and bring amazing friends. And when you have a chance, check out Roz everywhere because she's on YouTube, she's on a zillion platforms, and you'll see all her great links that Catherine has shared. But also, when you have a chance, check out her content for cash masterclass that's popping up. And we hope you stay safe, you stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch, and that you have an absolutely magnificent day. Take great care.